Hi, I'm Chris Lee, and this is Virtually Speaking. Joining me today is Esther Wojcicki, who is called the Godmother of the Silicon Valley, an educator who won the coveted California Teacher of the Year award, and a teacher whose many students have gone on to change and impact the world greatly. And even Steve Jobs made sure that his kids were Esther's students. An author of 2 bestsellers, including 2019's How to Raise Successful People, and a mother of 3 incredible daughters, Anne, who's the founder of 23andMe, Susan, who's the CEO of YouTube, and Janet, who's a professor of pediatrics at USF doing groundbreaking work there. Esther's been featured by Forbes, Fortune, Wired, Time Magazine, The Financial Times, Psychology Today, Business Insider, and many more, and is the author of viral blog posts for the Huffington Post. She's always been at the forefront of emerging trends in education and has been intimately involved with Google and Google EDU since its inception, where she was one of the leaders in setting up the Google Teacher Academy. Please join me now with the incredible Esther Wojcicki. Hello, Esther Wojcicki. How are you doing? Thank you for joining me on Virtually Speaking.
Oh, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
My pleasure. It's an honor to have you, the Godmother of Silicon Valley herself. I was so excited when that title started, being used about you in the media when your latest book came out, How to Raise Successful People. That's the perfect title for you, right?
Well, honestly, I was a little surprised, but I'm very honored to be called the Godmother of Silicon Valley.
Well,
I'm busy watching over Silicon Valley.
Yeah, and it's amazing because so many amazing things have happened from your household, from your world. Things have been created, including 3 incredible daughters who have gone on to do incredible things that you raised, and you being an incredible teacher, incredible leader, incredible educator. It makes sense that all 3 of your daughters went on to be so successful. Of course, Janet being the professor of pediatrics at USF and doing groundbreaking work there, and Susan being the YouTube CEO, and Anne being the founder and CEO of 23andMe. I mean, these are very successful people that you've raised. And then, of course, I think Google might have been started in your daughter's garage.
Well, what happened is that my daughter needed somebody to help her pay the rent. And she thought, wow, my garage is just sitting there empty. Maybe I should let somebody have an opportunity to rent it. And so she looked around, and it just happened. She's very lucky. She found 2 guys that seemed to want to rent her garage. And they just happened to be Larry and Sergey.
Wow.
And so, yeah, they moved all right in with their 30 computers and hundreds of wires. It was pretty exciting. The main thing she was trying to do when they first moved in is keep them out of the refrigerator.
So she ended up dating Sergey for a while.
No, that was Anne, her younger sister. Susan did not date Sergey. Susan was she had just gotten married.
Oh, so your other daughter started dating your other daughter's renter.
That's correct. Well, she came over to see what was going on in her garage, and there was Sergey. Mm-hmm. So that's amazing. What happened. Yes, it was.
I never got that story straight because it's a little confusing, but now I got it. And then Anne went on to start her own, tech company, 23andMe.
That's right. She went on to start her own. She had been focused on changing healthcare since she was a 14-year-old, 15-year-old.
Wow.
And because she had seen a lot of people in her life, in our lives, who had done really poorly after they were admitted to the hospital. And so one of the things she wanted to do early on was to create something called a patient advocate system. So if you went to the hospital, you had somebody there that would make sure your care was good. Somehow that didn't work out because it was really hard. And so instead, she's like, I want to make sure that you can be in charge of your healthcare. And so that's how she founded 23andMe. She wanted you to know your genetics, your DNA, so that you can take the best care of yourself, because no one's more interested in you than you. That's it. So if you know your DNA, then you know how to take care of yourself.
Yeah, that's amazing. So your daughters are all very caring and very, very good leaders, and obviously they got both of those qualities from you, who is
Well,
very,
I'm
very
very would
caring.
be
And
very humble to say that they got it from me. Thank you so much. I'm honored.
I mean, you won California's Teacher of the Year award. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
That's
2002.
that's amazing. And you also started a program at a school in journalism that turned out to be, when you retired this past June of 2020, the greatest, the largest of its kind in the nation. Tell us a little bit about that journey with you as a teacher and turning this program into something really special.
So I started this program in 1984. That's when I was hired. And there were only 20 kids in the program. And the goal was for me to teach them journalism. That's what I was told to do.
Were you a
I,
journalist coming into that?
I was a journalist coming into that. And so I was hired to teach journalism, English, math, and those were the main things.
Mm-hmm.
And so journalism, of course, being a journalist, I was particularly interested in the journalism program. And I didn't have very many kids at that point. And I thought, well, let's see what I can do to make it really exciting for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And the first few months it was pretty boring, I have to admit, because I was following all the rules that they told me to follow, which is basically
The books.
make them read the book, have them listen to you, and then the test is on Friday. And by the way, here's a whole bank of tests. You could just use one of those.
Right.
After about 3 or 4 months, I was like, oh my God, this is brain deadening. And then I took a look at my students out there and I was like, oh, they look like they were totally bored to tears. So I changed the way I was teaching. And I decided it was going to be collaborative. So if you know anything about education in the 1980s and 90s, it was not collaborative. Collaborating was called cheating. As a matter of fact, all the homework, when the parents got the homework, they were supposed to sign the homework that the child did the homework themselves. No calling their friends, no asking for help, no talking to the parents, nothing, just yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can imagine, here I was in class asking kids to work with each other. That was looked upon as heresy. But it seemed to work for the kids. They loved it. And the program grew. And by the year 1998, there were already 100 kids in the program.
Wow.
And so I said, I think now is a good time for us to start another publication. And I said, how about a magazine? And the administration said, a magazine? I never heard of a high school publishing a magazine. That is really far out. So I said, well, never heard of it before, but you're going to hear of it now. And so we published a magazine. And the first year it was published, it won first place in the country, in Columbia.
In what competition or
Columbia Scholastic Press Association. Also, I guess I have to say, there were no other magazines for us to compete against. but they loved us anyway. And so we got all these awards.
That's
and
great.
What was great about it, the best part of it all, is that the administration said, oh, yeah, I think maybe you should start a magazine. That's a pretty good idea.
Uh-huh.
Because, they like to have public recognition.
Yeah, Columbia is not a bad place to be recognized by.
Right. So it was I have to thank Columbia, and I'm really happy that that happened. And then so we started a magazine, and the magazine went on to be, it's still, all these magazines are still published today. In the next 10 years, I started another magazine every 2 years.
Wow.
So then we have sports, and we have arts and entertainment, and we have foreign affairs. I'm just trying to think of them all. And science magazine, anything kids wanted to do is what we said it was okay. Travel magazine.
Well, I remember a story that I heard, and now I get to ask you the question about Steve Jobs. So Steve Jobs apparently knew who you were, and he wanted his kids to go to take your class. So what happened there? Is that a true story? Is there a little bit of a embellishing going on, or what really happened?
Well, the true story is that one day around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, this man came in to my office, did not introduce himself, and sat down. I said, "Oh, must be a parent."
Right.
And sure enough, it was a parent, and he didn't
Mhm.
introduce himself at all. And he just started quizzing me about my program. It's like, what do you do? How do you teach it? How
Wow.
often does it, well, so forth. Very Steve Jobs style. And then after about 45 minutes, I was like, oh, I guess he's trying to figure out whether he wants his kid to take my class.
Hmm.
And sure enough, that was what was going on. And
Wow.
the
And his kids were
girl,
going into what grade?
that was his oldest daughter, Lisa Brennan Jobs. And his daughter was in a private school in Atherton. And so he said, I think she just needs to come here. And he pulled her out of private school and put her in my program. And that did it.
That was in high school. She was in high school.
She was in high school. I think she was in 10th grade at the
Oh, so
time.
he really cared a lot about the teachers he had and for his kids and the school.
I think Steve was a good guy, a really good guy.
Yeah.
He used to come into my class and just hang out. And,
So you didn't know who he was. He was just sitting there talking to you for 45 minutes.
I didn't know. I didn't know who he was. Even after I knew his name, I was like, oh, okay. I didn't pay attention.
Right.
And also he hadn't developed the phone yet. So, yeah,
Apple was
yeah.
still a pretty well-known company, Esther.
It was. And then one thing that I realized is that, oh, Apple must be all those great computers. So then I got much more excited. It's like, yes, by the way, I love your computers. So anyway, yes, we became really good friends.
Wow, that's awesome. So your whole approach, I'm sure as a mom and a teacher, is very collaborative, and you give the power to the kids to learn and make mistakes and do what they want to do, the freedom to kind of create and explore. Is that kind of the basic, inkling behind where you're coming from as a teacher and a parent? And I suppose also you're as a leader, this is
That's
how it should be.
You got it right. You summarized it really well. That's basically, no matter whether you're 5 years old or 25 years old, one of the things that's important to you is to be respected, trusted and respected. And so I built that into my program at school. I did that with my parenting. I made sure that my kids always felt empowered, always felt like they could achieve whatever it was they set out to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave them the opportunity to do it. And even if they failed the first few times, it's kind of like riding a bike. You can't learn to ride a bike by reading a book about it. You have to try it and do it. And so you fall off and you fall off and finally you get it right. And so then you can do it. I think one of the problems with a lot of parents is they expect their kids to do it right the first time, whatever it is. And you can't. There's no way to do it right the first time. And I've actually had kids in school who I say, it's an opportunity for you to try. And if you make a mistake, no problem. Who will say, really? I can do it again? And I was like, yes, you can do it again. Not only that, I encourage you to revise and do it again. Because if you did it perfectly the first time, why are you here at school?
Right.
What are you doing? You could be hired as a teacher. Maybe you could take my place.
So is that the premise of your book? How to raise successful people. It can be used as, to be honest, it can be used as a blueprint for business people as well, who are leaders, I think, because as a teacher, as a parent, or as a leader of, a company, all these things, these things work in all of those, examples. And I think that you have been hired by corporations and companies to talk to them about leadership because they recognize that. And so tell me a little bit about what the congruency is there with those three areas, how that it all is really the same mindset.
It is really the same mindset because you really are the same person. Your body changes, but you really are the same person. And so in the corporate world, people don't learn by sitting in any kind of meeting for an entire day where people are talking at them. It just doesn't work. And corporations like to think it works. So they do that. And they hire people that are going to basically lecture to you all day. But all the research shows that lectures are the least effective way to learn. It's just like, let's say a company's trying to talk about being more creative and innovative. So they bring in somebody that talks about innovation and creativity.
Right.
Can you learn to be innovative by listening to a lecture? Or can you learn to be innovative by reading a book about it? You know, in order to be innovative or creative, you have to be willing to take a risk and make yourself vulnerable and try it. And so the best way for corporations who want innovation or creativity is to get somebody who comes in, gives a talk, and then allows people to do it, to try it. And the same thing is true in school. You know, you want kids to be able to do something well, they have to do it. If they just memorize it, like for the any of those tests,
Right.
AP tests that people memorize, do you know that the studies show that after 2 weeks, just 2 weeks, you only remember 32% of what you studied?
Yeah.
Isn't that and parents are paying all this money for those AP tests, and kids are killing themselves to get a good score on the AP tests. All it tests is how good you are at memorizing. That's all it does.
Didn't they just ban the SAT score from getting into some, I just read that.
Some colleges have now dropped the SAT and dropped the AP tests.
Wow.
There's a school near Palo Alto or in Palo Alto called Castellea. It's a private girls' school. They dropped all AP classes. You can't even take the class. No tests, no classes, because they realized that what they were teaching is memorization and not anything else. So if you want to remember something, you have to do it. And then when you do it, you remember it. Just like, you know, if you learn to swim when you were 10 years old and you fall in a pool when you're 25 or 30, you will know how to swim.
Right.
And that's the same thing. You know, if you learned how to be a good public speaker when you were in high school and it's time to give a talk when you're 30, you still remember how to do it.
Yeah.
But you won't remember if you just read a book about it.
That's a very good point. So you've always been hands-on, and your first book was called Moonshots, right?
Moonshots in education. Right.
And the premise behind that was blended learning. Is that what you called it?
That's right. It's Moonshots in education. It was launching blended learning in the classroom. So blended learning was a combination of teacher direct instruction and technology, computers. And when I published it, teachers were not using computers in the classroom. The computers were in the classroom and they were sitting there. And so, like, why is that? You know, what can we do to help teachers see computers support learning? They don't just replace learning, they support it. And so that book did really well. And then I wrote the second book, How to Raise Successful People. And I called it People, Not Children, because I want people to realize children, they're people. They're just not kids. You can't boss them around and push them around and do all these things to them without them remembering. You know, treat them with some respect. And they might not be able to tie their shoelaces, but they will eventually do that. You know, they're eventually going to be able to do all this stuff, but inside is still a sense of self. And you want to nurture that sense of self so that they grow up to be empowered and caring people. They learn to be caring when they see it modeled by you.
Those are great lessons and great reminders for us all to hear, certainly. And so why do you think it was that all three of your daughters became really successful? I mean, I want to hear some more details from the book and from your personal archives of you know, memories and practices that you had. Do you think that you ever thought that they were all going to be really successful, or did it just happen because of the fact that you were the kind of mom that you were? Because so many people have said to me over the years, oh my goodness, look at her track record as a mom. We can't, be more excited to have somebody come in and tell our parents how to be successful, or for somebody to get the people who they're leading, as in their subordinates, or the people who are their employees, or even their peers within an industry. How do you inspire people to learn and grow in what they're doing? So you must be the master of that. When people look at your three daughters, they go, how could we argue with anything she says? So tell us a little bit about, some of those mindsets and practices that you did with them.
So one of the things people need to realize is that when you believe in someone and when you trust them, they then believe in themselves.
Right.
And it sounds kind of like silly, but most people don't trust themselves. That's why they're always going out and asking for experts on this and experts on that, because they don't trust themselves to come up with the right information. And so one of the things that I always did is I wanted my children and my students to know how to get expertise easily themselves. So back in the old day, if you look behind me, you see all those books. Those are all my friends, right? But in today's world, it's all online. I mean, I don't have to go to the library anymore. I can just go on my computer and I can compare what one person says to what another person says.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I feel that I've got the intellect to do it, I will do it. And so it's important for your children to feel good about themselves. So if they question you, they're not being rebellious. They're asking good questions.
Yeah.
So you want to encourage kids to ask good questions, to try new things, no matter what it is that they might have tried before. Maybe it didn't work out. Doesn't mean they should stop.
And you want to be willing to explain everything to them too. If they have a question, not be, oh, it's because I said so. It's also telling them to read the answer.
It's not because I said so. It's because I understand and I know how to do it.
And so I'm going to teach you, and I'm going to do. So do you do a lot of explanation, like this is why we're doing this, and this is why, what the thinking behind this is?
So when they were little, I did a lot of explanation. When I was a teacher in class, I did a lot of explanation. I always was willing to admit that I made a mistake, always.
Mm-hmm.
And what am I doing? I'm modeling that for kids.
Yeah.
Because,
it's okay to make mistakes.
It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to try something new. And as long as people are afraid to try something new, you'll never be innovative.
Mm-hmm.
Never.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I did with my children. And that's one of the things I do in my classes. And then in the corporate world, I'm friends with the guys that wrote this book, The $1 Trillion Coach. So that is Jonathan Rosenberg, Eric Schmidt, and Alan, whose last name, I'm sorry, Alan, I can't remember. But they wrote this book about Bill Campbell, who was a great coach, a football coach. And then he moved from being a football coach to being a coach of people here in Silicon Valley. So if you read that book says exactly the same thing that I'm saying. And he was advising CEOs, and I'm advising kids, parents, and also the corporate world, CEOs.
Yeah.
That's how it works. It doesn't change just because you have a little body from a big body, or vice versa.
Why do you think this Godmother of Silicon Valley title was bestowed on you by so many people? What do you think is really behind that?
I think it's so many kids have been through my program and feel empowered to do what they want.
And they went on to do great things?
Went on to do great things, yeah. And so I've been an advisor to many Silicon Valley companies. And then also many of my students have gone on to do great things. And so I'm honored to have this title, which of course I never thought about myself. But
I wish I would have come up with it. It's a good one.
Yeah.
So when you advise these Silicon Valley companies, I'm curious to hear what they're bringing you in to talk about with them. What are they asking for you to advise on?
Primarily innovation, creativity, people getting along better, product managers that, what can our product managers do to be more effective, to make, increase productivity, increase services, whatever it is that they're doing. How can we have a more effective company?
So,
And so I've been doing that.
so what do you tell them when they're asking for what are your policies and ideas on that?
Well, the number one thing that everybody needs to recognize is that you're working with people, and the more people feel good about themselves and empowered, the better job they're going to do. If they can hardly wait to leave at 5 o'clock because they can't stand being there,
Yeah.
this is not a very good situation. So what can you do to care about the whole employee, the whole person? And how can you make sure that their needs are met? And Google does a great job because, they have free food 3 times a day, or maybe all the time, actually 24 hours a day. And
Yeah,
then
I've been on that campus. That was the most unbelievable food court I've ever seen, and it was all free.
yeah, it's all free. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I think is important for all companies to realize. How you take care of your
Yeah.
employees predicts the future of your company.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think is really interesting that happened just within the last month is Siemens, a large German company, decided that in this pandemic and after, the main thing they were going to focus on was the product. In other words, what did the employee do? What was their final product? They were not going to micromanage anymore. No more checking all the time. Are you doing this? Are you doing that?
Wow.
They were going to then trust and respect their employees.
Wow.
And they would then, when it was time, they would share whatever it was that they had been working on. I think you have to read that article,
That's
Siemens.
amazing.
I'm impressed.
Yeah, that's the wave of the future. I've heard several leaders and thought leaders on leadership talk about that. So, in education, you're retiring now after how many years as a teacher?
40.
Oh, that's enough. You deserve-
I think I'm entitled to take a break.
yes, ma'am. Um, but you've seen a big amount of change and transition and growth in this area, but also at the same time, maybe not that much, right? I mean, maybe things are still being done the way they were 50 years ago in a lot of cases. So what do you think is the future of education with technology? Obviously, I think you're a big fan of technology being a part of it, but what do you see for the future? And now this pandemic is also kind of making technology become a big part of it. So what are your thoughts on that?
The future is going to be the kids are going to hopefully have more control of their learning. So I just set up a company with with a former student of mine, Ari Memar, and the name of the company is Tract, TRACT.app. And what is unusual about the company is that kids, teenagers, ages 16 through 20, are creating learning paths for younger kids.
Wow.
And the reason that it's great is because it allows collaboration between older kids and younger kids.
Wow.
If you remember back to that time, right? The most exciting thing you could experience was an older kid thinking you were cool.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to build that in. It's sort of like my program. So my program had 10th, 11th, and 12th graders in it together. The 12th graders helped the 10th graders and the
Wow.
11th graders. It was all peer-to-peer. So this is peer-to-peer learning and gaming. They're doing both at the same time.
Oh,
So we want to make them have a good time, Why suffer?
so the future of education is kids helping other kids?
I think it's collaborative. The future of education is collaborative. Just like what I was saying I'm in the workplace. The workplace, we're all working in groups. It's all collaborative. Shouldn't we be training kids to be collaborative in school? Shouldn't we be training them for the work world? Yes, that's my idea. So they should collaborate in class, in school. This is an opportunity for kids who may not have that opportunity wherever they are
Right.
in the country to have some kind of exciting collaborative work
Is it through
online.
Zoom? I was just going to say, is it through Zoom? Is it?
No, my track program, no. It's just normal. It's a app that is being built by the group, you know, my former student and all the engineers that he's working with. So no, it's not Zoom. I'm telling you, Zoom calls. Try to having 5 hours of Zoom calls and see if you wouldn't be brain dead after that. No, Zoom school is not the way to go.
Yeah.
I mean, Zoom calls like with you right now, this is fantastic. You know, so I don't have to fly to San Diego and see you. I could just do it in my house.
Right.
It's great. But, you know, if I'm doing that day after day, 5 hours, or some kids 6 hours a day, this is not great.
But technology with tablets and computers being in the classroom is definitely making things more fun, and the kids can actually then take the tablet home and learn things on that. That's something I'm sure you're.
Yes, I'm in favor of that. Not only do they take the tablet home, they've got it at home, right?
Right.
Because now they don't go to school. So, well, let's say they don't go to school in the traditional sense. I mean, I hope we're going to be able to go back to school next year, but I know we're not going back to school by January.
Right.
That is not going to happen.
Yeah. It's a challenging time for teachers, and more than ever, this is a moment where I think teachers can say, you know, see how valuable we are, you know.
Well, I saw something at the beginning that was really, pretty funny. And there was a post on someone's Facebook post who said, "I now realize that teachers are not the problem." It's like, yes, well, I've tried to tell you that for a long time. Teachers and parents, we're a team together. And that's the way it should be, working together to make sure that your child is the best that child can be.
Absolutely. I've heard you say that many times. Well, Esther, this has been so much fun. You are so amazing. Your books are chock full of incredible tools and practices and ideas that have obviously proven very successful for you in the classroom, at home. So you're an inspiration to many people. And I just can say it's a privilege to know you and have you on the show. And thank you so much for coming on. And it was fun.
Well, it was great to be on. Thank you for the good questions. And I look forward to getting more questions from some of the people that you're working with. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, Esther. My pleasure. Thank you again. And I will talk to you soon.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
Right, bye.